Okay, so welcome everybody. It's great to see you all and virtually, and we wanted to say a big welcome to the Human Behaviour Change for Life Foundation course webinar and Q&A. My name's Jo White and I'm joined by my colleagues Suzanne Rogers and Sophie Lewis. And just to get everyone kind of warmed up, we'd love if you didn't mind popping in chat where you're joining us from and your kind of interest today. So maybe just pop that in chat and we'll get started with the webinar. We're going to cover a number of different things today. So we're just going to give you a bit of insight into who we are, what's driven us with the use of behavioural science in practice, tell you a bit about kind of how we use that ourselves, but also introduce the foundation course before opening up for questions and answers. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Suze for the next part.
So why did we set human behaviour change up and what does it all about? Well, if we understand why humans do the things they do and what drives them to change, we'll be more effective at making the world a better place for animals, people and the planet. And that's what we're about, really. That is the why.
And in terms of how we started off, we've both Suze and I co-founders and co-directors of Human Behaviour Change for Life, and we've had long careers effectively looking at how we could change things. So whether that be in education, communications, campaigns, operationally, working in animal welfare, the sort of common denominator and the sort of shared interest in looking at how we can positively and sustainably deliver change. So we had that kind of shared sort of geekiness around the use of behavioural science and applying it in practice. And we felt very strongly that there was an opportunity for this to be utilised in the world of animal welfare. So back in 2016, we set up and run the first international conference for human behaviour change for animal welfare. It was sold out and had a really, really positive response. So we recognised that the time was right to set up an organisation that could support those individuals and organisations who wanted to utilise the science of behaviour change in practice. So in 2017, Human Behaviour Change for Animals was registered as a community interest company. And we've worked with organisations in the UK and internationally. We started to get asked increasingly to work in things either connected to animal welfare, but also outside of animal welfare, and certain projects which were related to kind of other sectors. So we decided this year that we would expand to become Human Behaviour Change for Life, and we launched our new website earlier this year. So our remit still very much includes the use of behaviour change in the animal welfare sector, but also looking much wider as well in human well-being and environment and conservation. So I'm going to now hand over back to Suze for a bit more about our journey.
So what we did right at the beginning was we had lots of consultancy from different organisations and did lots of training. And that was brilliant, and we still do that. These are just a few of the people. It takes a while to get permissions to use their logos. So these are just a few of the organisations we've worked with. And we focused on a lot of training in things like monitoring and evaluation, in strategy work, in incorporating human behaviour change, whether within an existing project or creating a new programme of work, taking it into account right from the beginning. What we really also like to do is our own research, and so doing things for other people is great, but we also want to do it ourselves. And so we've done some research. We published a paper, or Jo published a paper about the use of habit for human behaviour change, and how because so many animal care issues are routine, there's a lot of habits. If we can instill good habits in people, that's a way of human behaviour change. I've done some impact assessment work as well, and we've also applied for tenders and kind of where we've had that competition with other organisations to get the work. So just a couple of small examples. For the Canal and River Trust, we've done a few projects with them. One of them was looking at why the barriers to litter picking, so why people do and don't go litter picking as a family. With the international cat care, we looked at sort of massy mapping, looking at some of the work they were going to do and sort of creating this big mind map for it, and then putting it into a strategy to align with their strategy as well. And we've done some work with farmers, sort of looking at messaging of what pictures and messages resonate with farmers and which ones turn them off. And that one was fascinating, because just one example was that we had a picture of a farmer kind of looking wistfully over the field with his hands on a gate. And they were saying, why is he doing that? He owns the field. He should be in it or out of it. Why is he looking at his field over a gate? And that quite annoyed them. So that was quite interesting, just kind of doing that communication piece where we really talked to the audience and see what they wanted. So that's in essence of what we do. Feel free to ask more questions about that. But we work for lots of organisations on all sorts of different problems and elements of applying human behaviour change science. Back to Jo.
So we look at this in different contexts. So what we love about human behaviour change science is that we can use it, whether it be at the individual level with ourselves, so in our personal lives, but also we can use it at the organisational level. So it's applicable to absolutely everything. And what it does, it gives us this opportunity to really understand kind of why we ourselves are doing what we're doing or not doing. So we can kind of really get in amongst kind of the drivers, the barriers, the opportunities for delivering change. And then we can actually look at what the most appropriate solution is, the intervention that we want to apply, and actually pull on that from an evidence base. So it's applicable in lots of different areas of our personal lives, for example. And I was just thinking this morning about activities I've already done today that I've leveraged behavioural science to try and get myself to do them. So this morning it was a bit of yoga, because I'm getting very creaky at this age in my life. So I'm trying to strengthen my body. So it took me quite a while to sort of get myself to do that routinely, but by pulling on things like habit, looking at the science around motivation, willpower, it's been really helpful to sort of introduce that into my own life. So it's something that we can look at across our personal life, whether it's about getting ourselves to do certain behaviours like physical activity, eat more healthily, but also things like our relationships. So things like communications, how we're communicating with other family members, our friends, our animals that are around us. So lots and lots of different opportunities. Another example is also thinking about how we can kind of improve if we want to learn new things or undertake training, and things like pulling on areas such as learning theory, thoughts around, there's some great work that's done around what's called grit, and how that can be utilised in to get us to do things more effectively. So lots and lots of applications for personal life. So back to Suze. Oh, you're on mute.
Anyone would think I hadn't done lots of Zooms recently. So yeah, now also using behaviour change science at work. And so there's so many ways we can do it here, whether it's from meetings, like we often kind of advise, especially in multi-stakeholder meetings when people might have very different opinions and potentially tricky situations. We often advise people how best to run meetings using some psychological approaches to tap into that, whether it's kind of mapping and strategy work, whether it's campaigning, sort of thinking about how to use human behaviour change and messaging in actually the strategy of the campaign, and so on, whether it's other elements of communication and talking to people. We've done work as well kind of on conversations for change, where we talk about one-to-one dialogue, but also dialogue, much wider dialogue with communities and dialogue wider than that in society. So there's so many ways you can use it in your working life, whatever you do, whether your job is working with people one-to-one or with communities or with online communities or wider than that. There are so many applications.
So now over to Sophie, who's going to tell you a little bit about the course.
So as you've heard, human behaviour change science is a vast topic, and it covers subjects from psychology to counselling, behavioural economics, marketing, policy, and that's just to name a few. So this course, we really wanted to design it as a starting point on your behaviour change journey, giving you an overview and the context, covering just putting these different topics into context so that you can then distill them down into some simple, usable techniques that you can start to apply. But it's also really important to understand that scope. So understanding how the science of behavior change can fit together so that you can then see what areas resonate with you, whether it's habit, like Joe's been talking about, or other areas to do with communications, for example. And then from that, you can then go and explore those topics in more detail, either in your own time or through other learning experiences. So this course will cover some of the key principles of behavior change. It's quite short. It's about 3 to 4 hours should take to complete, depending on how long it takes you to do some of the activities. It's multimedia, so we have recorded video presentations. We also have some video case studies, but also PDFs that you can read through and other resources externally that supplement the educational materials. It's interactive. We put it in quotation marks there because we don't interact with you personally, but we give you activities that you can do to reflect on some of the things that you're learning about and really start to embed that knowledge and that understanding. And because it's an online course, you can study it in your own time. You can stop and start it whenever you want. We've broken it down into quite nice small chunks so that it's not so heavy that you have to sit down and listen to big, long presentations in one go. They're quite digestible, and you can supplement that with the resources. And we also wanted to offer a few free one-to-one support sessions to go with the course. So we offered 20 of those to begin with, and there's a small handful of them left. So if you would like that, then we do encourage you to use the code FIRST20 when you sign up. And that will be with Suze or Joe, and it will be for 45 minutes. And you can use that to discuss what you've learned in the course and make a bit of an action plan as to how to put some of that learning into action in your own life.
So thank you very much for listening. And what we'd also like to say is please do stay in touch. One of the things we sort of suggest people do is to sign up to our newsletter. So pop onto our website and you can then get the monthly newsletter, which has lots of great links from different areas of human behavior change, science and practice, lots of examples from different sectors. And we've had some great feedback about those, in terms of kind of them being really useful insights for people. We also offer regular in-person and online training courses. So the new course is an example. We have some other courses on our range of training. We also offer bespoke training. So for those who want, either as an individual or an organisation, to tailor it to their particular needs, we can do that as well, because we're aware it depends on kind of what you're looking at as to what area of behavioural science you want to maybe focus on and how you can really get that practically applied in your everyday work. We undertake consultancy, support and mentoring, whether that be individuals or organisations, as Suze has given some examples. And another area we do quite a lot of work on is understanding messy systems, messy problems. We find that quite often organisations are grappling with those challenges, and actually taking a systems approach and really sort of unpacking the problems is really helpful for them, both to identify the solutions and get the most applicable interventions in place. So we generally share a geekery and a passion for animals, people and the environment, and applying human behavioural science to that. So I'm now going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to share the questions. So please feel free to come on your mic or pop something in chat.
Thanks, Jo. Yep. So if you have any questions about anything that we've covered already from the application of human behavior change science in those different areas, or about the course itself, then please do put it in chat.
We can let people speak as well if you want to.
I was going to say, it's Ian here. Can I just jump on the mic, Sophie?
Yeah, come on the mic.
Of course, Ian.
I get so tired of typing things. I'm so lazy. So this is a sort of not left field thing, but I wondered whether the team could speak to this. That one of the things we're doing a lot of work training young researchers, climate scientists, plant scientists, to do a better job of communicating about their work with the public. And I wondered how you felt aspects of the course would dovetail with that. Often environmental scientists like ourselves are very motivated to affect behavior change. And I don't want to plagiarize your course, but I'd be really interested to see whether we can encourage scientists to look at the best ways to communicate and then affect behavior change.
Well, first of all, a quick thing is, please do plagiarize the course in some ways. You know, I mean, we want it to be used, and that process to also be both ways. And so we love to, you know, we're happy to kind of, if you get one of the free places, but that we were talking about, that's to help people kind of talk about how they can apply it to their work. So we really want to get it out and be used, and you know, with a small amount of plagiarism type element, it's good if you're using it, and we can discuss that, and then we can use you as a case study in the future as well. I'll pass to Jo to answer some of the other bits.
Yeah, so I suppose the course, what it does is it introduces varying frameworks and models that can be really, really helpful. So we first of all introduce a framework that we've developed in terms of understanding, delivering that change and impact. So it kind of gives people an insight into a process that they can go through to really help them to start on that journey of using behavioural science. But then there's lots of other models and frameworks that are introduced. Obviously, this is very much an introduction to behavioural science. But what we've tried to do is give that kind of broad understanding of what's available and how it can be applied so people can start their journey. So from a point of view of kind of looking at those conversations and the challenges, it means that someone who's interested in applying behavioural science can start to kind of unpack the sort of challenges they're dealing with and start to think about where they can go for further additional support. So that's really the thoughts with the foundation course. And we will be following up with an introductory wider course that kind of really starts to dig into sort of some of those specific areas, which would also kind of help people as they move forwards. Sophie, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered that all really well. Ian, does that cover your question?
No, that's really great. Thank you. And well, obviously I'm in anyway. You can tell I want to do it. So that's for starters. But also it would be really interesting to know whether the course there will be repeated iterations of it so that we could direct people to it who want to follow up in more detail.
Do you mean
so that if we have people who are interested in aspects we touch upon of behavior change, we can point them towards you for more detail if they wanted to do more training.
Yes, definitely.
Great, thank you.
And we'll be developing more courses, as Jo said. So and as we mentioned earlier, if you sign up to the newsletter, that's the best place to be notified of any new courses.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Ian. So we've got a couple of things in the chat. Paula says, I have done a 2-day course in MI and also 18 hours online course. I wonder, does your course cover other models to benefit MI?
So I guess I'll go with that. I've just put the answer in the chat as well. So I think the course kind of touches on MI, but in a very top tips way, because MI, for those of you who don't know, is motivational interviewing. It's a little bit of a misnomer because it's more about a way of communicating for change in dialogue with people on a one-to-one basis or wider. So we love MI, we use it ourselves. In the course, it covers it in a very top tips way because there's so many other fields to pull on in the course. And so we couldn't kind of go in depth into any one model, field or tool. So it's alongside other tools in the course.
Yeah, and I was going to just add to that, some of the models and frameworks that we have kind of mentioned within the course fit really nicely with MI. So things like the stages of change model is really useful from a point of view of kind of getting that understanding as to where people are in that process of change, and then how you can kind of really sort of support them moving forward. So there's kind of things that you can also add to that repertoire.
Thanks, Jo. And then Kate asks, are frameworks and models universal across different groups or demographics, e.g. children, young people, adults?
Shall I start with that one? There's a whole host of behaviour change models and frameworks that you can pull on. And what we tend to do is we tend to sort of like to look and unpack the problem first of all. So really starting to get in amongst it. And that's where we may pull on certain frameworks And yes, they can be applied across different groups, different sectors, and look at, in order to really get that understanding. So, for example, the behaviour change wheel and COM-B model you might have heard of can be utilised in many, many different ways. So whether it be the individual or groups, populations, but you can also use it in lots of different sectors and lots of different age groups. So it's about kind of picking the right sorts of models for what you want to do, and that will come out of the process of going through that understanding first of all, and then looking to change and applying the right sorts of interventions.
Thanks, Jo. Any other questions?
I guess we should also say that the course is £35 if you haven't grasped that yet. It's very much an introductory course, as we've said, because we wanted to kind of go breadth first rather than depth. The plan is that we've already got some others online that go into much more depth. So we've got courses about, for example, monitoring evaluation. We've got a course about compassion fatigue and those kind of elements. We've got courses on strategy, all on the Thinkific site as well. And then we realized we hadn't actually done a basic one across everything. And so we did it, and this is it. But hopefully, as it did with our learning journey, you kind of realize that there's so many things, and then you want to dive deeper. And then we might have already done a course for that deeper dive, or we might have one coming. I guess the other thing about sort of these models and things is that for us, it's so fascinating kind of learning about a model or a way that one field describes something, and then hearing it in another field, you know, for example, how behavioral economics might have a different word for a similar type of model as another whole field. And so it's really fascinating once you start kind of becoming fluent in the language of behavior change. You can see how different fields define similar things in slightly different ways and package them in different ways. So that's really interesting as well.
And that's something you said there, Suze, is really key, because this course really does give some practical examples of how these different frameworks can be used. And that's something that we've found can be missing in other bits of information. And what we really wanted was for this to be not just theoretical, give you an introduction to the theory for you to be able to dive deeper into that, but just be really practical and actionable. So you can start to use things right from the get-go and start to really put them into your context. We get asked whether this sort of course is the right course for various people. You know, is it relevant for me? And really, we really wanted to show that it's actually relevant for everyone, whether you are working in conservation or animal welfare, or whether, like Jo was saying earlier, you just want to make some improvements in your own personal life.
And I guess also the course does encourage you to reflect on your personal change, because it's so easy to try to change other people, especially in most of the roles we've got, looking at your answers. And you have a better understanding of that if you've kind of really analysed what you're trying to change on your own world and your own behaviour. So we encourage that kind of reflection on your own issues to help inform how you go about changing other people. Sorry, Jo, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar about the whole kind of using yourself as a sort of personal little lab, so that you can kind of go out there and think, okay, you know, I've learned a bit about this. How is this applicable to me? What am I doing? Really sort of getting amongst kind of understanding your own behaviours, because that provides so much insight, both in terms of behaviours, but also in terms of using the frameworks and the models that come out with behaviour change. So it can be really, really, really useful. And I think, you know, the thing for us is that the human animal is a sort of common denominator of both kind of a lot of problems and challenges in the world, but also the solutions. And this is what's so exciting from a point of view of this discipline, because it's not just pulling on kind of one area. So it's not just sort of looking at elements of psychology. It looks at lots of different areas of social science. So we pull on things like anthropology, sociology, but we also peek into the areas of innovation and design. So thinking about things like human-centered design. One of our specialist team is also a animal-centered designer. So if this course starts to kind of whet your appetite, we have a whole host of other things that we can talk to you about in other areas as well. So lots of potential, but we've placed this course very much as that kind of introduction to whet people's appetite, and then they can start to think where they want to dig deeper. So were there any other sort of questions or reflections?
So we've got another message here from Paula saying, I find that using MI is easier in my working life, but not so easy in my family life. Is this normal?
I think that sometimes in your family life, because you're so close to people and there's so many other kind of baggage and factors to play in and a longer history, it can be tricky. I personally don't necessarily find it harder in my family life. I just find it maybe more difficult to stay as zen or as professional as I would in a professional working environment. So yeah, that's an interesting one. And again, human behavior change is so much wider than MI. MI is a really useful tool, but it's only one part of it. And I think that I'd probably struggle to completely separate when I'm applying MI, for example, or when I'm applying other things in those dialogues and conversations.
And I think just sort of building on what Suze said there, I mean, it's a really interesting reflection. Thanks, Paula, for sharing that. It's kind of thinking about if you kind of talking about relationships you've had for a long time, it's kind of remembering where behavioural science can give you those insights about how much our learned behaviours that we've been practicing time and time again without even realising. This is where my love of habit comes out, because we've got all those behaviours that have become really automatic when we're around our friends and family. So certain things will trigger us and get that kind of emotional response, and we're off before we even know it. So I can think of plenty of examples, probably won't go into those now, but I can think of plenty of examples where I get triggered and then I have to go, whoa, remember your behavioural science, Joe, and get back into that kind of, as Sue said, that Zen place of utilising things like MI, but also things like values-based communications and so many other things. So lots and lots of different areas you can pull on.
Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting that we're talking about the MI and these kind of communications tools, because we have a nice case study in the course from when we ran a Conversations for Change course over, I think it was about 6 months. We did that with an international organization and their international teams. And the case study outlines what we did, but it also provides a video conversation with some of the participants, and they reflect on how they found using MI in their professional life. But it's really interesting that lots of them actually do touch upon how it affected their personal relationships too, and with their family and their friends. So it's a nice one in there.
Any other reflections? It doesn't have to be a question. It could be a comment or anything that struck you from what we've covered today. Today is really sort of about a meet us, and we'll talk a little bit about the course. We do regular webinars for people and things as well. So if you're on our mailing list or on the newsletter, those will come through if you want more.
Yeah, and we're also interested in feedback as well. So if you've got any thoughts on webinars that you might like to have or see out there, please do let us know, because we're always up for suggestions of things that people would be really helpful for people.
While you're thinking and mulling this over, I'm going to pop the newsletter link and the course link in the chat box for you.
So we're very aware you've got like a minute left. Any final reflections or thoughts or anything you'd like to fill that minute with?
Otherwise, we'd like to say a big thank you for coming along to the first of our webinars to do with the course. Please do keep in touch. Let us know. Also, let us know how you're getting on. If you've got anything you're doing on the behaviour change side that you'd like to share. As we said with our newsletter, we love sharing examples of the work that people are doing out there. So do get in touch about that. But thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care and speak soon.
Bye.